Okay, there's a certain attempt to keep me honest. I'm prepared to play a different game, as prepared as I'm going to be before I started, and I'll probably be less prepared when I get to it. But I feel like I have to get through the battles of Alexander. Not that I don't want to. It's just I have this pressing load of other games that I want to do, but I also feel like I want to get through most, if not all, of the battles. I have a certain problem here. This is, by the way, going to be the Battle of Cronium, again in the Tyrant series. But I have another problem coming forward, which is I'm trying to get the hell out of this city, and you know, I'm thinking about doing a one-year move, and if I do that, it's going to put me in a position where I don't know what I can take with me and what I can't. So I can't kind of start anything too big, and in a sense, Alexander may be problematic as well. Do I want to bring Alexander with me? It's a boxed game, and I probably am going to bring very, very few boxed games, maybe 4 or 5. It's not a bad choice. It's got a lot of stuff in it. But on the other hand, you know, we've already looked a fair amount at it, so I don't know. Mainly I'm going to be bringing my magazine games, which are easier to transport, if I manage to do this. Anyway. The short of it is, I've got something bigger planned that maybe I won't be able to complete anyway. And not huge, but we're not sure. And then I also have this, which is probably going to take me several more months to get through all of them. Anyway, this particular battle is 1 year after whatever we did last, Kabbalah. And it's Mago's son who's pissed off and has decided he wants his revenge, but he can't wait for an African army to be supplied. So he manages to scrape together remains of his father's army and remains of, and that was what, Himilco or whatever. No, this is Himilco. Mago was his father. Remains of his father's army, and then mercenaries, Greek mercenaries over here, and some of the Iberians, which probably were from his father's army. Now, what we're seeing is more and more in the last couple of battles, Syracuse has been, over on this side, under Dionysus, has been getting green units in their countermix. This is kind of dangerous in terms of possible intermixing. Luckily, they're on different flanks. I don't know if that was a design decision based on, gee, we're not sure, you know, how these armies were disposed anyway, or if it's just fortuitous. Anyway, what we have here is, yeah, these two ragtag armies, huge map. We got the map extension. Excuse the extra terrain that's going to come off, but it's just, I got a little bit of sticky stuff underneath that I'm trying to post it sticky, that I'm trying to see if the map won't pooch there. Definitely having some pooching issues with the Guatemala map anyhow. I don't know why I didn't flatten this out better, but I tried, man, I tried. Anyway, historically, this ends up being one of Carthage's few victories. Now, their army's a little different. First of all, they've got a fair-sized hoplite contingent, nothing huge. But then they have a lot of these other units, and largely they're actually a little bit better, proportionally, I guess. I don't know. We've got a lot of these stupid tribals in the back, and of course the chariots here. But so far what we've seen is the hoplite armies are just getting crushed by the African armies, and especially by things like the Iberians and the Celtic units and such now. On the Syracuse side, we're seeing a fair amount of decent medium and light troops over on this flank, whereas the hoplites are all concentrated towards the center. We got some more of these. I actually ran into a problem here, which was countermix. So Greek mercenaries, which are these purple guys, are used by both sides. Now I got these blue ones. These came out of one of the other sets. I'm not sure which, but it's not It's not going to be available if all you have is Alexander and Tyrant. I don't know. Maybe C3I came out with some. I couldn't find any units that were easy matches either. They have to be these 5.5 LP units. And I got really worried because clearly, you know, I had the purple ones set up over here, figuring, we're gonna have another mishmash battle with colors all over the place, and we do. There's some green here, but then this called for 5 more of them, and I'm like, oh, we got a big problem here. We'd have a big problem anyway if it was the color issue. So you may have to actually sketch up some of your own counters for this one. It's not many. It's just 2 counters, or, you know, if you have one of the other sets, they may include it. I don't know which one had it. But yeah, this is a big battle. One thing we see that's kind of interesting is we've got almost a semi-echelon coming forward here with the hoplites. And we'll see how well that works. In general, though, they have not, their maneuverability problems have caused them so much difficulty against sort of equal quality heavy and medium units. The lights can hold their own against it, but it leads me to really wonder, one, if I'm screwing something up and playing something wrong with these hoplites, but 2, also if we're going to have equally stupid problems going forward when Alexander has to face the Persians. Whether, granted, his phalanxes are going to be good, the Macedonian phalanx, but they still have the maneuver problems, and I have not yet figured out how to protect them. Especially when you have something like this with no medium units to extend. You know, somebody pointed out, hey, you should be protecting your flanks with the medium units. Yeah, and I try. To some extent, I guess, just maybe not very well. Cav-wise, we have mixed cav over here, as well as here, lights and heavies. And then here, the same kind of thing. We've got some lancers, though, there. And then here, not many heavies, just 1 unit of heavy over there. So they're probably going to be in trouble. At least if the heavy cav can get a real charge off. If they can't get a charge off, not so much. All right. And then skirmishers again. Hey, Syracuse has very few skirmishers here. Bonus! I'm going to try... Somebody also mentioned that the newest rules have the ability of skirmishers to do orderly withdrawal through your own forces without disrupting. If that's the case, that would solve a lot of the problems with the skirmishers. Still routing through would cause problems. That's fine. But if they can orderly withdraw, you know, that was the big deal where Hannibal was getting screwed all the time over in SPQR when I was playing that, was that, you know, he'd have this cloud of skirmishers. The Velites had special rules where they could go through and interpenetrate the Roman line. Plus, the Romans had such flexibility they could leave gaps in their line and then fill it in as they hit. And they had stacking rules and all kind of other cool stuff. Well, Hannibal had no such thing, so his skirmishers ended up just breaking. They cost more. You know, under the rules I had for SPQR, which are older even than this. This is 2005, I think, maybe 3. My SPQR rules, I was using 2nd edition, even though I have the 1st edition rules as well. But the skirmishers really caused problems. They cost, I think, more victory points or you know, route points at the end of the game. Oh, speaking of which, let's look at the special rules for this one. There aren't much. It's basically the route points. The Carthaginians have 165, Syracuse has 150. But again, they have a lot of kind of not so good hoplites here. The center is pretty rich. You got your Spartans in there and stuff. And then here it's not bad either, actually. But we decided to fling the most vulnerable hoplites up first and see if we can lose the game before we can bring everything into play. By the way, that's not my decision. This is fixed setup for every scenario I've seen here. There may be a couple GBOH scenarios that allow you some flexibility in setup. I remember there being such. But not this one, and not most of the ones that nothing that I've seen in this game yet has had any kind of flexibility to your setup. Let's try to do something I don't usually bother with in these games, because I have some space to maneuver here and consider maybe some of the implications of the setup and what we might be able to do here. Because the first problem I'm facing, of course, and this is totally not along these lines, is Dionysus has the elite bonus. I could give an elite command to someone, and I think I can give it to anyone even if they're outside my range because it's the first turn of the game. However, from a very tactical and simple opportunistic point, my thought is I kind of want to move my center line of hoplites forward so I have room to maneuver this left flank of hoplites. Otherwise, I don't know. You know, it's just tough to cope with. I can only inch these guys forward, or I have to break their line. Of course, I could align them with the reserve back here, but it seems to me the best move is to do that. I also would have the opportunity instead to move the skirmishers forward, which might make sense because I can't move these guys forward fully while the skirmishers are there. The skirmishers are exactly at the distance my hoplites would travel. Oh, this sucks. So I can't do this because if I move my hoplites forward, they're going to get broken up by the skirmishers. Well, that sucks. So I don't want to move that forward. All right, well, frankly, I don't think I want the initial command then. This can go before this if need be. I don't really care here. The only real advantage is it guarantees me 2 activities, and I don't see any terrible reason that I want to move first. Anyway, back to the more strategic concerns though, if there are any in a tactical battle. Yeah, this sticking did not work. Never seems to. And now it's going to pop up at the worst time, you know. Probably before that. But it looks to me like the Carthaginians have a somewhat larger line overall. It's hard to tell because of the overlap. So, you know, I have 5 hoplites back here, whereas this is a completely thin line stretching really almost entirely, except maybe this command here is about equivalent. However, it looks like I have more forces total, so there might be some chance for overlap, but the map boundaries kind of defend against that. Over here I've got some rough terrain, and over here is the edge of the world. Who knows what's there, but we can assume that there's some reason that we can't just maneuver over there. I always feel like the maps are a little too tight in some of these scenarios. This one with the extended Guatemala map, I had to cut it. It was too poochy otherwise, and it made a decision I've been having thoughts about all along, which is, should I just cut my maps? Actually, I think this is the edge I cut. I'm not sure. Anyway, I kind of came to the decision of, yeah, I probably should. They're easier to manipulate that way, and it's not like I'm going to sell the game. So I don't see too much room for an outflank unless the Cav decides something. And these 2 Cav Corps, or possibly even these, although like I said, there's a little bit more anchoring over on that flank. We're closer to the nasty terrain. Could determine whether or not an outflank is possible. Then on the other side of that, there's the, hey, what about weight of power coming in one side? Because if there's a significant strength in one place compared to the other for the different forces, that could be of great importance. And here it's actually the Syracusian center, which appears to have all the weight behind it. First of all, I've got the reserve, but also I have my best units, and I'm facing crap. So what I think I'm looking at with this setup from Syracuse's point of view is to try to march ahead and blow through that. Maybe that means I do want to take the initiative with my I may want to take the initiative with, yeah, no, I got my cav in the way. Yeah, I think I'm going to want to take that initial initiative and push those skirmishers forward, clear some room for myself to try to punch forward through the center and try to get a breakthrough there. Because I don't think I'm going to get it here. There's a heavy weight to the Carthaginian side here. This is where their hoplite phalanxes are. They've got a decent cav, we both do. But then they have some decent units backing those up, whereas here they just have the line of their light infantry. There's some heavies in there too, but it just doesn't look as powerful as what's over on the Carthaginian right flank. So I think that's what we're going to be looking at as an attempt by Carthage to move forward harder on the right, on their right, and for Syracuse to try to advance on the left for whatever that means. All right. So let's take that initiative and push those skirmishers forward. Well, I'll probably take several activations, maybe the whole turn, because I don't think we're going to see engagement. We may see some of that kind of measuring. Can I get within charge range and be prepared for charge? You know, just outside of charge range and be prepared for charge, and then see if I get an initiative and I can, you know, bust away the other guy's cav as well. And here's where we end up. You know, pretty much a solid line coming through here. Not all line command eligible, obviously. I can command this or this, and I can throw these LPs in. This one would have to stay out. Cav set up just out of charge range. Same thing over here. Kind of a disadvantage. I could have gotten an initiative momentum here if I had pushed just a little bit further, but I didn't want to chance that, and now I'm in a position where, well, whoever the commander is here can't do a line command, but he could send a fair amount of that cav forward in a punch forward. I'm not sure why I left him kicking back there. Probably to move some of these. Yeah, it looks like these guys were uncommanded, so I actually have a shortage of leaders, don't I? Oh no, this is a leader here. Okay. Yeah, it looked like, I mean, Carthage has less leaders than they kind of need, whereas Syracuse looks like it has about the right number. It could be useful to have another one here. But we're getting within range where things can strike now, basically. The skirmishers are at risk from the chariots, but what can you do? If you want to advance in the center, and that's where the chariots are, you got to push them forward. So, on to the next turn. I decided to check the living rolls for the skirmishers because they really disturb me, and I know I'm planning on, hey, letting them do the orderly withdrawal. Well, it turns out they can walk through any unit without suffering cohesion hits to either unit. So they're fairly capable of interpenetrating according to the newest rules of Great Battles. 2008 rules, the errata from 2008, don't cover this. This is a real problematic thing with living rules, is you can't keep them up to date. It's either print out the new living rules or hunt down, you know, one thing that you want to change or whatever. When you're talking about a rules booklet the size of the new deluxe version, it's quite a large set of rules. Not that this one's tiny, but it's expanded and bloated even more. This is 32 pages. I don't know what the other one is. I think it's like 50 pages. You know, I mean, there's significant exceptions to it, added to everything, and clarifications and all kind of stuff like that. And that's great and all, but I don't know. I'm not going to say I prefer. I don't have a hard copy of the living rules, and dealing on the computer, it looks different, you know. So I can't make a judgment call, but I feel like rules bloat is a problem. On the other hand, I feel like the GBOH rule sets tend to be fairly difficult to understand. I'm not sure adding more words would help. I think better organization would, but that's a step they're unwilling to take in the living rules, and something that would justify a complete rewrite and reprinting of the rules. Anyway, it turns out that there's another thing that skirmishers have now. They don't pay an extra cohesion penalty for moving more than once per turn. That's huge. I mean, they become godlike little motorcycle troops, I'm afraid now. We'll see. It's because they don't have any real formation. And of course, that's not going to apply to the chariots. So Carthage's skirmishers, being somewhat tied to their chariot line, probably don't want to do that. There's a little ambiguity with the chariot line, which is that if you did a line command on chariots, they're treated kind of like cav. But the line that they're inserted into consistently in these scenarios over in the Tyrant book, they're all being used as kind of some sort of semi-skirmisher type unit. And that's fine, but I don't think the rules actually cover that usage. I'm playing them as if they move like the skirmishers, not in all ways, but in the sense that what was it? Oh, in the sense of assigning a line command. So if I assign a line command to chariots, they all have to be within range of the commander by normal chariot movement. I'm actually considering, geez, I'd like to set up chariot forces like they are in Chariots of Fire. Obviously, they still have crappy morale, but use them as this sweeping line that I can slide across the flanks and just do a bunch of shots, because that's what's so amazing about them and light cav also, is that if you have enough of them, and enough isn't a very big number really, you can plink off a unit per turn if you've got the mobility for it. So if there ends up being a clear area, those chariots could become a potent force. As they are and how they're deployed, they're meat. You know, that's all they are. You wouldn't be able to use this kind of deployment in Chariots of Fire either. They'd get crushed. But if I use a different deployment, I think I could get more use out of them. That lends to question, and this is something we're talking about on a different subject, but within GBOH, it lends to question the whole system in terms of how it handles the chariots in this. I think what's done in Chariots of Fire is very believable. What's done here, it's kind of like, why are you bringing your chariots if they're so damn useless? Maybe they weren't used as skirmishers. I don't know what the historical, evidence is that they were used more as a skirmish line than, as some sort of little flying column that could run around and harass the skirmishers and just shoot them into non-existence and then pull away, regroup, and then use them maybe in some sort of pursuit, like a light cav. That sounds more believable to me within the game system, at least. I don't know. I'm faced with one of those moments where I set something up that doesn't work, and it never bugs me much in a tactical game. It really bothers me in a strategic game when I make or even operational, when I make an error of the nature of, where there's some kind of little gameplay thing or whatever that could significantly change the nature of the game. But even if I'm playing opposed, I usually don't feel too lousy in a tactical game, especially one that only takes a couple hours, like the GBOH. And that may be the big thing, it may be the time factor. But I put this guy into range so that I could give him, the initiative, super leader bonus, whatever, and the elite leader initiative. And that's great, except I'm not really terribly sure I want to give it to him. And I'm not sure that there's anyone else. I mean, I'd give it over here or something if I could, but I'm out of range. But I may give it to Dionysus. The problem with giving it to him is it's my damn militia, my damn hoplites. And they're screened by the skirmishers. They're too far to make contact. It doesn't really look like a terrible advantage to go first. Now, the advantage to it, of course, is I can move a little forward and then get a momentum move a little later, but I don't know that I really need that. So I think I'm just going to push my skirmishers forward again. And hey, maybe I'll be able to disrupt those chariots, which, as I recently have been discussing, I would not set up like they have them in the scenarios. Just trying to get their skirmishers out of the way more than anything else, because you can't walk through them. They can walk through other units. And I guess I could just pull them behind the line, but I feel like, well, maybe there's something, maybe they can tempt some chariots to come forward and that'll be good or something, I'm not sure. Certainly the chariots aren't going to be effective against the hoplites, so I don't know. I should probably just be getting my skirmishers out of the way so they don't cost me any points. But you can see I made some engagements and cleared some space there so that the front line can get by them. And over here we see the Carthaginians actually using their skirmishers a little bit more in advance than I like to often. They've run up and started shooting the hoplites. The hoplites are going to run them over. The skirmishers aren't going to die. They can run back, and they basically don't suffer anything for doing so. But they've done a couple of hits to the hoplites, and that's pretty good for skirmishers. And now I can withdraw. Facing the other skirmisher line, sure, I could have moved up and done the same if there weren't any skirmishers here, but because the Carthaginians have the superiority in the skirmishers numerically, they actually have the ability to do something useful with them instead of just clogging the battlefield with them. So that's kind of cool. You can see the advantage to having skirmishers if the other person doesn't have them in enough numbers. And that's really the problem with the chariots out here. Those skirmishers aren't terribly valuable, so they do serve some purpose. They just don't serve the purpose that I like seeing them do over in Chariots of Fire, which I think they could still serve in, given enough space. A little bit of action started here. One of the things that I see is fairly common. You put out one unit as kind of a, hey, you can have this unit, right? So the cav charged, two of the units hit that one, slight advantage, didn't break it or anything. Often you'll see something actual, a real cost being paid. But now this force is set up to be hit kind of hard. The only problem with it is the way it's set, we're looking at heavies hitting heavies, and that's not going to help no matter what. The only thing that will help is if this heavy hits, say, this, rather than this one, then we'll get an attack superiority on that, and, well, that's about it, really, which is pretty big. And then we can use a light to engage this guy and kind of trim him away in that sort of sense. And we get a slight advantage out of that. So all the kind of, I don't know, maneuvering the game system to try to get an advantage ends up in a very minor advantage. Here the skirmishers ran away from the line, and it's beginning to form up and prepare for its attack. Anywhere else anything too exciting happened? Crazy shit is happening over there on the right flank of the Carthaginian line, where they're not able to launch their cav, and now that's going to give this guy the edge, which means he can push his forces forward kind of with impunity, because this line can't move all at once. Well, some of this isn't cav. There's actually a weird unit. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there's some of these which are marked as light cav on the back accidentally. Printing error or whatever. Obviously they don't turn into light cav by moving. But anyway, skirmishers mostly out of the way here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can continue our move forward and maybe get them completely out of the way soon. You know, it's just the guys in front, I don't know how big an advantage they're giving. We can see what the skirmishers can do to be an obnoxious force, but engaging hasn't really helped. That's created just a roadblock for me. Until I get the heavy units into place, hitting those skirmishers and running them down, nothing good's going to come of it. Of course, they are kind of pinned in place, I think. So that's one vague advantage. They're actually going to get blown out of there at little cost. But it is going to cause some, not cohesion hits, although it'll do that too, but it's going to cause some formation damage to the overall large line that's there, which is really the big advantage, because once cracks in the line start happening, all these lighter units, and I include the heavies in the lighter because they're more maneuverable, can slip in and start getting flank attacks and can just wreck that whole line. So there's kind of a, I don't really want to advance. Well, if you don't advance, what happens? Then your weaker force, the Carthaginians, or the less hoplite heavy force, can try to take advantage where they think they have things heavier. And it looks like they have a heavier preponderance over here. So this could be a bit of a problem if we don't advance. But if we do, we might start losing those heavy units. And I think, once again, Syracuse is going to lose another battle. The difference is they actually lost this one. But I really just don't know how to make those hoplites work in the face of decent foes. When they're going up against Persians or whatever, there's so much crap in the line. You'll see that. I mean, we saw it over in Hoplite itself, but you'll see that when we get to Alexander charging against the Persians. His units are just so much better that, and also the Macedonian phalanxes don't have the must charge forward rule, I don't think, which means that he can keep a line organized. The skirmishers aren't going to break his line formation quite as much. Now, if I do this right, if I move in this way and diagonally, I can keep things, because these peltists, they're not forced to move at full rate. Syracusan cav was very badly handled by the counterattack there. I got 2 momentums. Now, after the initial attack, I tried to trump in. Usually a 7 is going to get me in there, but it failed, and that just spelled the defeat of the cav, as I was able to bring some of the light infantry up to chase routing units and just really destroy any hope of this flank holding for the cav. Point-wise, we're seeing a 21-point chalk up on that, so that's pretty painful. But much worse is now this flank's hanging out there. Yeah, there's still a couple of horses left, and they're going to get overwhelmed as well. It's just, you can see the victory's been had on that side, and now what? You know, now it's a question of, well, this, I can try to refuse the flank with those peltists to some extent, but I've got to win the battle real fast over on the other side, where that's just going to get rolled up, and you know, once the hoplites start getting outflanked, it's all over. All right, let's go from bad to worse for Syracuse, as they're not able to get they're not able to get a line command with the no, why not? I mean, they can't get a line command, but I could have moved this instead of a leader. All right. Yeah, let's move the 5 forward and leave the leader back somewhere. Anyway, they were unable to get a momentum in place, which would have allowed them to launch maybe a flanking attack in here. And now they're open, well, with the leader back here, maybe not that much, but they're open to giving at least the first blow to the Carthaginians. Now I'm looking here, we're going to be doing a line command with whoever this is, Himilco or whatever, our commander-in-chief on the Carthaginian side. He's going to do a line command with these lights to try to outflank the militia. Now the problem is the skirmisher is kind of holding the line. It's preventing the enemies from being able to advance very quickly. If I can drive it out of the way, that'd be great. But there's no guarantee that I can. However, it's damaged, which means one javelin launch and I can brush by it. It doesn't want to withdraw. If it withdraws, I expose that flank. So this is one case where you kind of have to leave the skirmisher in place and just take its loss. It's not a big loss, and it's really doing a good job where it is. It's not going to hold. I think that line's going to collapse, but yeah, at least it might slow things down a little bit. Result of everything that happened, well, these lights actually came forward. They're forming something of a line. going to be having trouble if it gets faced by those hoplites, but they're out of range still. And they could do an orderly withdrawal. I could even do a prearranged withdrawal with those suckers, which is something I don't usually do, but they seem almost begging for it in this situation, and it might just happen. Over here we see the heavy infantry. The medium over here ended up clearing out, you know, the skirmishers that were in the way. The heavy infantry hit, did some damage. One of the hoplite units got knocked aside by some of the mediums over here. We no longer have a real line anymore, but whatever. I'm also forming up that flying column of chariots that I've been talking about. Gee, I wish I had that. Well, what the hell? I got room to do it, and I had a command that I didn't really need in terms of him being able to generate a line command. He's the overall commander. I'm going to form up an old-style chariot line and see what it can do. It might be able to just sling through here and cause some serious disruption. We'll see. You know, there's, what, 5 of them? If that's like 3 or 4 tactical quality hits, that's a pretty good hefty hit on the phalanx. One of the big things, one of my initial plans with Syracuse was to try to thrust forward with their best hoplites, and that hasn't happened. And a lot of that has to do not with, you know, my tactical decisions being bad or anything like that necessarily, but more a gamey thing, and one that can be explained, you know. But the Commander Dionysus made a Trump attempt to try to stop something he didn't like happening on the other side. He was so distracted by that, whatever, that he ends up not ordering the forces forward in quite the way he wanted to. Maybe they're seeing that the battle's lost, that they don't want to engage or whatever, and he's having a harder time now to engage him. Now, does the Trump make sense? Well, maybe. Because, you know, he's trying to exhort his troops, hurry up, win the battle before they lose it, or something stupid like that. That's like, wait a minute, if we're going to get rolled up over there, screw it, man, let's go home. These are all non-Syracuse troops. They're allied troops, and they may not feel too terribly invested. As always, you got to do some hand-waving to try to explain some of the results. But, you know, you can. It's one of the facets of... when you start throwing random factors into games, you can say, oh man, I can come up with a reason why this is happening the way it is. It makes sense, you know. There are many different possible reasons, right? And this is actually something that's going on BGG. One guy is very in favor of games without much, if any, randomness, in particular Bowen Simmons games. A lot of people seem to look at them as these great, you know, simulations. Now, I'm not sure you need random combat for a simulation, but it's really tough for me to believe that you can even do reasonable hand-waving if results are predictable. You know, if you actually know what the enemy has, for whatever reason, due to scouting or whatever, which can happen in those games from what I understand, there's a possibility that you know what the force you're facing is, and you can directly calculate what's going to happen. The same thing goes, though, with very smooth and calm CRTs. For example, the one in here is very smooth. But there are some big randomnesses, like the trumping effect, like with the hoplites, whether or not they break when they break, or if they somehow magically rally and hold position. All these kind of things, the more randomness you throw in, the more you're actually probably capturing the breadth of what warfare can really consist of. And if you start... if the system is too predictable, and that doesn't matter whether there's a CRT or not, is the point, or whether movement is, you know, in most of these games, movement is absolutely deterministic, and, you know, that maybe shouldn't be the case either, you know. It's not in hoplite. You get to roll and see how far they actually go when they're charging, only the hoplites. But anyway, the point is, the more room you leave for things that can't be explained directly by the model, and that aren't necessarily spelled out or whatever, like the die roll for combat changing the results a little bit, whatever, the more it's believable, because maybe it is handling those things, not by anybody's intention, but just sort of in the scheme of things, the randomness throws it into a more believable status. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on randomness. Over here, yeah, this cav is just screwed. All right, let's see. Here's the kind of geometry that kills me in these hex games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hexes away. I need to be 6 in order to give him the elite command bonus. There's no one else I can give it to. I don't want to move forward. I can move around this skirmisher, actually, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I could slide around that way. But then I'm exposed, and that whole light infantry line is going to hit me, and I get no advantage for striking. If I do it during my regular turn, I can move forward and then move again on a momentum and maybe blow that whole line away, which is what I was hoping to do. Nothing else I can do with the elite, so we go to normal movement. The Carthaginians win the other flank cav battle as well. This crappy little cav leader over here was able, or leader, I don't know if he's the cav leader, he was able to run up, command the cav, not as a line or anything, slip the light cav around behind, and just demolish the lancers and the heavy cav over here. And things might, get a little interesting over in this corner here. There's some possibility of fighting our way out, but overall, that's looks like the Carthaginian cav is going to win both the flanks, and they're doing pretty well over here too. So it's not a good day for Syracuse. That's what it comes down to. Pausing in the midst of an operation, actually, right here. Over here, the bleeding just continues with the all too familiar sight of the hoplites getting routed by flank attacks. They were unable to be protected. Nothing I could do, really. You can try to say, well, you probably shouldn't have advanced or something. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I have not figured out how to operate these things unless they're just moving forward in a singular wave, and they weren't set up to do so. I guess I could spend a lot of time dressing my line and getting a single line command to move forward, and then I wouldn't get to choose probably when the attack actually happens, because the lights would end up slamming into me as they did here, eventually break a couple units and start cracking in as they did. Anyway, in an attempt to stop this from getting too bad, because I've already lost one, I got 2 more routed, that's a lot of points going. I trumped in and then got a momentum, and I'm charging straight forward with my best of my hoplites, and I threw Dionysus himself into the battle. Now we've got little no momentum markers on everybody else at this point. The idea here is if I can break the center, maybe I can turn this around somehow. It doesn't look terribly likely, and especially, I had to take a point to move quicker, and then I ended up taking javelin fire, which was actually pretty damn effective. I say pretty damn effective because I've got like a +2 penalty on the Javelineers, one for being heavy, one for being hoplites under these circumstances, being hit from the front, I think. I gave it to them anyway. Probably be at a couple more hits if I'm cheating. This is after the tactical quality checks and before we hit. Now these guys aren't unharmed, but they're pretty close to it. They got really lucky with their TQ checks, whereas the hoplites didn't get terribly lucky. But the reason there's so many hits is they're each hitting or getting hit by 3 Javelineers. And low ammos, there are a scattering of out of ammo ones, but they're all going to be out of ammo in a moment. So I didn't mark that, because if they got a low ammo, well, the next guy in line, if they got to throw another javelin, would make them no ammo, and they're not going to get used again. So that's why there's no notations there at this point. You take certain shortcuts. And when you're wise, they don't actually affect play. All right, now it's time to just start rolling on the actual combat charts. We're all attacker superior hitting this crap. and we get to assign the losses, plus we have the hoplite, stability, which is a saving throw whenever I go over my tactical quality. That effect is barely a draw. I mean, we punched back quite a few units, but 2 of ours are routed, and there's a difference. These don't come back. They go in my dead pile. These guys, there's a chance to rally them if I want to, or they take time to leave the field. They're not gonna, they don't immediately damage the morale. So now there's a lot of points scored up here. 12, 26, 36, 50 more points going, and then 10 for this guy. So we're 2/3 of the way to our route value, and we've done almost nothing to Carthage, really. Ouch. Launch some of the lights, one to come up and try to protect this a little bit, to whatever end that might be, but also up here to try to break up the attack. Made a flank hit, useful, but their units are just higher quality than my light units. So it's tough. I've got these Syrian guards here, or Syracuse guards, which are pretty good, but I didn't engage with them. Now I'm faced with a really hell decision. I've got 3 enemy cav. I've got 2 facing them. Their cav is better than me. It's Numidians and stuff like that. On the other hand, if I don't attack them, I'm going to get hit from the rear. I can't activate these. My commander's locked in combat. I can hope that my cav saves them, I guess. It's possible because their leader's off doing something else, so maybe their cav won't come into play. So I think I'm going to probably just refrain from activating him and see what happens. I'm allowed to not pass and not activate because he's locked in combat, and maybe he'll get cleared of combat by the end of by the end of the action round. Which means it boots over to one of the 5s, and there are a couple of them over here and one over here. We'll see if my force gets loosened somehow or demolished. And not a whole hell of a lot more happened over here. The cav, I think they fought out in one more unit, routed, but it ended up rallying because it took the leader with it. Now he got an operation. Hey, that's cool. Mainly we're just seeing the cleanup of the routing units leaving the board, and there was some rallying going on as well. This guy tried to rally some units. I don't know how well he succeeded. Obviously, he can't do the hoplites, though. And that means the points are at 99 to 16. With, what Carthage has lost is stuff they failed to rout. A couple of light infantry, and what's that? Some heavy cav that got hurt bad. But I would guess this is pretty close to over. These forces are stuck out in the middle of a death trap, really. The lights are going to come swarming around and hit them. There's just nothing I can do about it. I don't have anything light to throw in the way and try to block it out, and I don't have the solid phalanx line that is the only way to defend them. As soon as breaks in the phalanx line occur, the whole thing goes. It's not quite the same when you got the lighter troops. The lighter troops are more maneuverable. Well, the smaller counters are more maneuverable. Even if they're hoplites and stuff with their 4 movement allowance, you can rotate them and they get reaction moves and all kind of stuff like that. But these suckers just don't, and they're just sitting ducks. Easy to get caught away and do things that maybe aren't that bright in this game. In this case, this guy got a momentum after smacking into some of the remaining forces that were up there. And I didn't want that momentum. I can't trump in with Dionysus, I don't believe, because he's in a zone. I didn't look up the rules on it, but there's a lot of restrictions on the zone. I didn't think he could do the elite action, and I don't think he can trump while he's in there. So, anyway, my best trumper was Hiero. He's directly involved in this. I've got another 5 somewhere else, I think. Yep. Maybe not. I thought I had another 5, but I don't see him. Anyway. So, I rolled for him. He succeeded in the trump, actually got a full 3 actions. Tried rallying some units. Threw his peltists up to screw with the cav. That was the main problem. And then also pushed some units up forward. He couldn't do the line command because he had already done a couple of individual activations by that point. But it seemed like the best move at the time. Anyway, the disadvantage to it is I have a number of 4s that I might have wanted to get momentum checks on. On the other hand, I do cancel out a couple of the enemy's 4s as well. 1 there, 1 there. So, you know, it may come out fine in the wash. It's just, it might have been better off trumping with someone who wasn't gonna step on my turns in that way. But it worked out all right. A little bit of points for Syracuse, but Carthage took some heavy hits, including javelins, you know, being thrown at routed units and stuff like that. And we got some of their. This is, I think, this is one of the thick counters. It's kind of funny having them mixed in with the normal counters because they look like they've got damage under them or something. And that can be, so they look kind of like this, which is just, you know, they're double-sized. But it was hard to get a hold of the old versions of Tyrant and Phalanx, and I was like, well, GMT, Fall Sail, whatever. I don't know if I think I did these on P500 actually, so they contributed to my Fall Sail purchases. Oh well. With a little doinkering about, you know, trying to pick off some lights here, activating these so they could attack and bust up, you know, some of what's hitting them. Yeah, there was a little bit of play along the edges. We had the skirmishers move forward here. But in the end, Commander Himmelko launched another attack with the lights. He got through 2. I think he only got 1 momentum. So he got 2 full activations. Well, he used them to smash up 3 of those heavy center units that were the heart of the Syracusan line. Another 46 points, that including this, that drove Syracuse over the edge. They're broken, and I mean, it's clear they are. You know, I mean, they lost the 2 cav sides, but that wasn't important. The only thing that was really important was the maneuverability of the lighter, smaller units, and they have just told in every single one of these. As long as, and if you look at SPQR, you see that in my battles against Hannibal even, and against, what's his name? Pyrrhus. I think again and again we were seeing the hoplite or phalanxes getting busted up by the Roman maneuverability. And I'm not sure the game, I'm not sure if I just don't get something that I can do. I mean, I'm trying to protect those flanks, trust me. And it's just, damn, they're tough to defend. And they end up getting ragged in position and just getting smacked all out of shape. You just have to knock one down and the whole formation just falls apart in a way that the smaller units that are more maneuverable, they're just flexible. They can shift around and cover their own flanks and stuff without a lot of trouble. I don't remember too much of SPQR. I know that I felt like the battles usually went the opposite of what they were expected to go. which meant that things that the Romans would win, not some of the bigger ones, but certainly some of the stuff that, you know, Hannibal was winning early on, man, those were ending up being blowouts in the other direction. And I'm beginning to question whether or not these more maneuverable smaller units are just so much better that they're almost impossible to defeat. Now, I'll tell you this much. In hoplite, you could definitely beat up the Persian army. And some of that was leadership. Lousy leaders don't do very well, and a low number of them. Some of it's lower quality troops. They had a lot of really crappy troops in play. And then, you know, but I do know that I was seeing ways that they could win the battles where they got trounced. And we're going to see if I can beat up poor old Alexander here using these more flexible units. You know, I really don't know, because I'm not necessarily a very competent player. I play a fair amount of it. I can clearly see that I might be screwing something up. This one, though, yes, Carthage was, you know, historically won this. This was supposed to be a close battle, fine. I tried to use strategy, though. I tried to be clever, and because that's one of the problems. A lot of times I kind of neglect thinking too carefully, but I'm trying very hard to see if I can make these hoplite armies work, and they're just not holding up to what amounts to be probably about an equal quality army. I mean, when you start seeing these suckers in there with their 7s and stuff, yeah, the hoplites have their resilience, but that seems to be more than made up for by good maneuverability. And as long as there's good quality barbarian troops. I don't know if I mentioned this. In this particular scenario, at the end of it, there was a note, because Dionysus, I think, sent some of these auxiliaries, whatever, the mercenaries that he was recruiting, into Greece, and they kicked ass there. So they may just be a stronger weapon system. But, you know, we're seeing crap, really. This is the feudal levy, sort of, from, well, but the levies coming out of Africa, the tribal units and such on. And yes, there's some good ones. There's the veteran infantry that's not too, you know, it's not the same level as the heavies that are over here, but it's pretty decent. It's 6s. They have a few penalties in terms of being able to do the orderly withdrawal, but overall they're pretty damn strong. And the 5-pointers, well, 5-point units are not good units. This is the kind of stuff the Persian army is made up of. And the way these are deployed in nice, clean lines, able to move forward and operate. And then here's the other thing. Nearly everything is missile-armed here for the Carthaginians. And that's pretty potent, too. So those 5-pointers, those are javelineers, which in the Persian army, those are pretty good missile units if they've got a 5 morale or quality. So I think, you know, whatever it is, I don't have the key to operating the hoplite and phalanx armies yet. All right, we'll send this one up. What the hell is it? Cronium.